Bismillah. All right. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Rahmanir Rahim Malik Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. All right. So, okay, thank you all for joining us for our final session of Khalifa Conversations during Ramadan. I'm Corey, the founder of Green Ramadan, and co-hosting with me in this conversation is Sevim, the executive director of Green Muslims. And I was going to say, as we're settling in, I'd like everyone to mute themselves unless they're participating in the discussion, but that's already there. You're already doing that. That's great. Feel free to jump in or enter comments in the chat box. Like I said, you can jump in with your audio. If you don't want to use your video, jump into the conversation, please. To chat, if you're on a laptop, just click the chat button and the chat window will appear on the bottom of your screen. And if you're on your phone, just tap the screen, and on the bottom of your screen, you should see 3 dots under which you'll see the word more, and then select more, then select chat. And if you need some help, just let me know. So the purpose of Khalifa Conversations is to have discussions about practical ways to live the environmental spirit of Islam with our community. And alhamdulillah, we've been having some great conversations this Ramadan, alhamdulillah. So before I turn it over to Sevim to give the introduction of our topic today, I just want to ask if you would let us know where you're joining us from in the chat box. All right, Sevim, Bismillah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome everybody. I'm super excited that we got through all of Ramadan, continuing to have these conversations on a weekly basis. And I am very hopeful that we will be able to continue them as well, probably not on a weekly basis, but we will try to put something together so that we have these Zoom talks at least once a month. So please, before I forget, everyone check out our websites, Facebook pages, sign up for listservs so that you get the notification of when we're going to be meeting again. But today, we really wanted to open this meeting up to everyone to share your own questions and answers, make it a real conversation as we talk about ways to continue these practices that we discussed during Ramadan, and then also taking them out to the larger community. Of course, we're under unique circumstances right now, but inshaAllah, in due time, our mosques and Islamic centers will open back up. And what can we do with the communities at large to help our organizations be more green, to connect more with nature, to bring environmental stewardship into the definition of being Muslim. And on that note, I don't even want to talk that much about it. If anyone would like to bring up some ideas, I know that it's a challenge. Some mosques and Islamic centers do have green teams already. Some have them, but they're not that active. I'm curious to hear about other people's experiences and any pluses and or minuses that you want to share with everyone else. And please feel free just to speak up. It's a small group, and we'd like to hear everybody.
So I'd like to share something real quick. I was reading this book called Black Nature, and it's about 4 centuries of African-American nature poetry. So the reason I was drawn to it is because when we think of people writing nature poetry, we don't think of Black people. But they wrote it. They wrote some poetry, some good stuff. So there's this one poem in here that really caught my eye. And if you'll bear with me, I'd like to read it. Okay, thank you.
Of course, of course.
So the poet is Marilyn Nelson, and the title of it, and forgive me for the pronunciation, but I think it's Rulia noctiflora. I believe it's a scientific name of a flower. So here we go. Bismillah. A colored man come running at me out of the woods last Sunday morning. The junior choir was going to be singing at Primitive Baptist Church over in Notasulga, and we were meeting early to practice. I remember wishing I was barefoot in the heavy, cool-looking dew. And suddenly this tall, raw-boned wild man come puffing out of the woods shouting, "Come see, come see." Seemed like my Mary Jane's just stuck to the gravel. Girl, my heart like to abandon ship. Then I saw by the long tin cylinder slung over his shoulder on a leather strap and his hoboish tweed jacket and the flower in his lapel that it was the professor. He said, gesturing. Oh, somebody's coming in. He said, gesturing, his tan eyes blazing, that last night, walking in the full moonlight, he'd stumbled on a very rare specimen, Ruellia noctiflora, the night blooming wild petunia. Said he suddenly sensed a fragrance and a small white glistening. It was clearly a petunia. From the yellow future beckoned from the yellow future beckoned from the lip of each tubular flower, a blaring star of frilly tongue-like petals. He said he'd never seen this species before. As he tried to place it, its flowers gaped wider, catching the moonlight, suffusing the night with its scent. All night he watched it. All night he watched it promise silent ecstasy to moths. If we hurried, we could see it before it closed to contemplate becoming seed. Hand in hand, we entered the light-spattered morning dark woods. Where he pointed was only a white flower until I saw him seeing it. So the reason that this hit me is because I think we have to help people see what we see. So we're excited about, being in nature, and we're excited about seeing the signs of Allah in the trees, in the birds flying, in flowers. So I think we need to help people see what we see and help them get excited about it too. So that's my one point. And I'm opening up the floor to other ideas right now. I'll be quiet for a little bit. Mute.
No, I'm clicking the wrong place. Thank you, Corey, so much. That was an amazing poem, and that point that you made is key. So if anyone has any thoughts as to how to help others open their eyes, how to share your own experiences. For those who've just joined, this gathering is actually going to be more of an open discussion about ways that we can continue the practices that we talked about during Ramadan, the green practices, and then how to expand our action to the community as a whole, in particular influencing our mosques and Islamic centers. So anybody else? I mean, you can just start speaking because we're a small crowd.
Hey, it's Manasa here. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Walaikum assalam.
So I'm not hardcore.
You don't have to be.
No, you're cool. It's okay.
I'm a lazy gardener. I can't stand gardening. I'm looking at the dandelions. I'm going, inshallah, it's good for the environment. I don't have to do anything. But I think what I hope that hanging around guys like you will rub off on me. But so a couple of things that I've worked on is so I'm in the Toronto area, and one thing that I had worked on in our Islamic school / mosque was just bringing recycling into the masjid. And alhamdulillah, in our municipality we have curbside composting as well. So but the challenge, assuming that once the masjid's open again, and I guess we can sort of think about how this transposes onto maybe other situations, is that the administration keeps changing. So once one set of administration has bought in, or the cleaner changes, or the or the manager changes, you know, and sort of the idea of succession, plan of succession, that's a challenge that I found. You know, re-educating and then just reintegrating into the system each time. So that's one thing I was thinking about. But then, Corey, your poem got me actually also thinking about another thing. I'm lucky, I live in the suburbs, and I'm exposed to a lot of nature. But in Toronto, one Muslim woman within a sort of high density area in the city, which is known as the Thorncliffe area, which per capita has like many you know, newcomers to the city, and many apartment buildings. So there was a fear of them going into the jungle. You know, like this sort of, there was a sort of a cultural fear of going into sort of the sort of the forested areas that were in those high density cities. And so she created sort of like family outings for these families. So getting them, you know, sort of to reconnect to nature, and also not have this sort of fear that may be cultural, right? I mean, like, for example, as a person of Pakistani descent, there's a fear of dogs, right? There's just this, or even like before we had a cat, there was a fear of cats, you know, just a certain sort of irrational, whereas like 7, when I went to Turkey, it was like dogs all over Istanbul, massive dogs.
And cats too.
Oh yeah, cats. We're just like, we're crazy cat family now. So, so Corey, your poem got me thinking about the sort of the showing people what is already there, but not necessarily, you know, them, you know, realizing that it's there, as well as just thinking on, you know, on a systemic level as to what do we do. So I guess my gig is more like just trying to cut back on waste. That's where I, you know, I'm that's my sort of place where I'm comfortable. I'm not so good with, like, you know, gardening and nature and all this. And so even thinking about, as we're doing a lot of takeout nowadays, you know, I had been thinking about this before. They had this campaign to encourage restaurants to have compostable or, you know, or reusable, just, you know, incentivizing all of that. So yeah, so those are the 3 things I was thinking about, was you know, showing people nature, including myself probably, because I do like to go on guided walks. I don't like to just show up. I like, and then the other thing is, like, you know, our Muslim institutional systems. And then the third thing is just, even, I think, even our halal restaurants, I would consider them as part of our Muslim institutions now. And they're actually pretty crucial to many of us right now, and how we can think about, you know, waste reduction. So yeah, just throw that out there.
A lot of good points. One thing that came to mind, which is really more of a question, if you're having issues with the changing administration, is there any way, and this is a general question for myself, for everyone, is there any way that a strong green team can be created at our Islamic centers that can outlive whatever the admin is, and start to gradually? I mean, I understand the change will come slowly and patiently. If you try too hard, there will be some sort of backlash, most probably. But to gradually start to institute changes in the ethic of the institution, like recycling, for example, reusing, rules about not wasting, to make it a part of how that institution is run, no matter what the situation is, no matter who's in charge at the time. It's a big challenge. I mean, even as a nonprofit organization, how we're struggling to stabilize what we stand for, so that it's not about the people who are there at the time, but the organization itself. So it's a big test. But yes, getting people outdoors. What I'm experiencing, given the fact that I grew up in the woods and I don't have those fears of plants and animals and woods and wilderness, even my friends who do have such fears, as they become parents, they don't want their children to have them. And so I'm very excited to see them encouraging their kids to do more outdoor sort of stuff. And so my personal passion is definitely having these educational nature hikes that not only teach facts, but all facts about our local environments, but also link nature in general to our faith. And I hope that Green Muslims can be doing more of that. I hope I get to do more of that, because that's really what I'm most excited about. But there's so many aspects to what we need to be doing to care for the environment, to appreciate it. There's the hikes, there's the recycling, and everything in between. So thanks so much for sharing all of those ideas.
One time I saw this this meme online that it was like, we don't need everyone to be doing everything perfectly when it comes to anything, but also when it comes to the climate, we need a lot of people doing a lot of things imperfectly, and to help our situation. So yeah, if you're not into going out, that's cool. Get in where you fit in, and find someone to do some guided hikes, guided family hikes. And I think that's a good part of having a green team, where someone has strengths in one area, another person has strengths in another area, and then we can all work together to make the best things, the best opportunities for our community as a whole. So yeah, I think there should be green teams at every community center or mosque, whatever you want to call it. We need green teams.
And not
everywhere.
only to change the institution, but to help bring like-minded people together, so that you're not alone in your environmental concerns. I mean, with our first chat here, I, like several other people, was just so relieved that, wow, there are this many people who care about this. We're not alone, but we do need to pull together to support one another, and then have more of a voice.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
So there were a few points that I would like to sort of second or re-emphasize. Corey, thank you so much for that beautiful poem and reflection. I really appreciated that, and that was like a real treat to have that be our opening. And that really resonates with me. One thing that I think is really powerful is, and in general, I would say, anytime that you want to motivate behavior change, leading with love rather than fear is more powerful and more healing. So to really connect people with like that deep love, and within Islam, like really, we can reflect on Allah's creation and how it cares for us as this reflection of mahabba, as this reflection of kareem, of this reflection of wadud, of like the deep love and the deep generosity and the way that Allah cares for us. I mean, really, like sometimes when, and I think part of what we really need in at least US culture, and I'm only going to speak for the US because that's the only place I've lived long term. But I think in many places it's applicable as well. Part of what we need, and part of what I feel this crisis has been, what I feel Allah has been trying to teach us through the current crisis, is to slow down and reflect and connect and be fully present. So I know for me personally, and also when I have led other people in like sacred hikes, it's a really powerful practice to go out with intention, leave your electronics behind, or at least put them on airplane. Because if you don't feel safe not having your phone with you, that's totally understandable. But to put it on airplane and go with the intention of, I want to be fully present with Allah through the creation. And then like breathe and use all of your senses, not only the five senses, but also like our internal spiritual senses as well, just to really connect in with all of it. And that can be done individually, and that's a beautiful practice individually, and it's a beautiful practice as a group. And I agree that part of what's really helpful and really motivating is to go together in groups when possible, and to know that you're not alone. One of the things that I would also like to bring into the conversation, particularly when it comes to, getting people into the outdoors or getting people out into the woods in particular, and this is another advantage of going as a group, I think we also have to keep in mind the justice implications of things like who does and doesn't have access to public green spaces, or equity and safety issues, such as like the fact that, each of us, depending on our different identities, experiences being outdoors in a public park or a wooded area in a different way. So for example, like we all know, like as women, we walk through the world differently, because we have to, right, to keep ourselves safe. And there's a lot of there's a lot of ways structurally that public parks and public green spaces could be made so that they feel safe for everyone, right? So, we have certain concerns as women walking alone in the woods, for example. People who are Black have different concerns walking through the woods alone. Right now, in response to like the racism that's coming against East Asian people in the United States in reaction to COVID-19, and the fact that COVID-19 first became an epidemic in China, and we're seeing increased rates of violence against people who are Asian American at this point in time, and maybe even generally speaking, but particularly during this point in time, some of my friends who are of East Asian heritage don't feel safe to go alone into the woods. People who identify as LGBTQ don't always feel safe going into public green spaces, because we're all from groups that have experienced violence because of our identities in places that should be safe spaces, public green spaces where people can go for renewal and healing. But unfortunately, we do live in a society where there are systems and structures of oppression that we have to be aware of, and that cause safety concerns that make some people not feel safe or not feel comfortable to go into those green spaces and be able to make that connection, because you have to feel safe first, right, before you can really go deep and make that connection. So that's just something for us to consider and to think about, like, how can we contribute to making public green spaces safe spaces for everyone, making them welcoming places, inclusive places. Also thinking about how can our public green spaces be more accessible to people with disabilities, etc. So just like some things to flag, like what, the justice issue is really important. Leading with love rather than fear, because long term, that's what works. And I personally also feel that is really the core of our teachings, right? Like if we look at the Quran, yes, there's love and there's fear and there's awe, but the core of the Quran is that love, and that the Rahman and the Rahim that every chapter except one of the Quran begins with. And then that it is really powerful to know that you're not alone. I personally grew up in a frontline environmental justice community where we had 70% higher rates of cancer than the rest of the state. And it wasn't until I went to university that I actually discovered there was an entire environmental justice movement across the entire United States of America. And it was this amazing feeling of, oh my God, like I'm not alone. You know, we're not the only ones. And there's this entire amazing movement toward justice and balance, and creating a society in which everyone can, you know, be safe and have clean drinking water and clean air to breathe and healthy food to eat. And those things are basic human rights, and it's so important. And at the same time, like you burn out trying to do that work alone. But in the end, to me, it's really about what I term as revolutionary love. So those are my thoughts. I kind of went on for a while.
That was amazing, though. Thank you for bringing up all of those points. There were many points there. A lot of them touched my heart personally when you get into the issues of spirituality and nature. But justice and just a level of comfort. One thing that I found that Green Muslims needs to provide is a bridge for the Muslim community to get involved with other organizations. A lot of these environmental groups and also outdoor groups want diversity, but it takes some time for everyone to feel comfortable in those groups. And that's something else that I think maybe our Islamic centers can be involved with if they're able to provide opportunities for people to get out into nature. That's a first step. And then maybe partnering with other non-Muslim organizations for activities. But mentioning justice, environmental justice is a huge issue in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Not only opportunities to get out into nature, but the fact that, well, you know, from where you grew up, why is it that certain communities have higher rates of illness? Well, it's because the pollution is going to those communities. How can we allow that? Would the Muslim community ever approve of such things? I would hope not, but are we aware of these problems?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not. And so that's another branch of environmental education right there. So much to be done, but all of those were really wonderful points. If anyone else would like to respond.
May I add on what Emily just pointed out about environmental justice, and also like what you mentioned, Sepim? So like you know, like sometimes I'm not sure if, like, as Muslims in this country, we are aware of the resources that this country is using from around the world. So oftentimes when I get a chance to speak to the community, I mention just pointing and the energy resources that is being used in this country, that the United States is only you know, like 5% of the world population, but it consumes almost 25% of energy in the world. So that's about justice. That's only one, it's energy. We haven't even talked about other resources. So we have the issue of environmental justice here in this country, but also how do we see ourselves as being here, and also like the environmental justice to the global world, where probably like most of resources that we take is from other, you know, other nation that, and you know, like if we're speaking about climate change, they're the one who's bear the brunt of the all the consequences of all the impacts right now. So that's one point, just like adding to what Emily just said. But then, like, you know, that actually drives me also on that. I think the sister from Toronto mentioned about education earlier. So like, you know, like in terms of, I wanted to emphasize like on like, you know, within our Muslim communities, and I think Safimi also mentioned about the education for children. So like the thing is, we are actually in desperate need of world leaders who have compassion to this earth. This is like all the masses, because we see like the world leaders don't even take like responsibility of this, you know, like this mess, and you know, like all the like, you know, like the chaos that already happens in to our to the earth. um you know, like as we see now, it's very hard to even like come into agreement, like, you know, like internationally, just because I think like a lot of like world leaders don't even like don't have this compassion. So when I got a chance to talk to mothers or like parents in general, I said like, please, you know, raise and teach your children to love and respect nature, because we are in desperate need of world leaders that have compassion to 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 this earth. And these children, our children, is going to be the future leaders. So then we need to prepare them, so then we don't you know, like, you know, like replay the same thing again and again. So we're, you know, like to put, like I call it like planting the seeds for tomorrow.
Nana, I've got a question for you. Sorry, Corey, you want to go ahead?
So this is to her point, talking about, you know, talking to parents about getting your children in nature, because we need, you know, leaders. We need these leaders now. So a friend of mine named Sarah, who's a Green Faith fellow with me, one time she there's this book, Following in the Footsteps of the Prophet, and I believe it's by Tariq Ramadan. And she read this passage talking about how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he grew up, you know, his parents sent him out to live in a desert, you know, because it was healthier for him. And so through this living in the desert, he had these experiences as a child that, so that, you know, when Allah talks about, you know, stars, when Allah talks about birds, when Allah talks about trees, when Allah talks about water in the Quran, he had these, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, had these intimate experiences in nature as a child. So when Allah put that on his heart, the Quran on his heart, it meant something. So that's why it's like so important to get these children having experiences in nature, especially our urban children, to so that, you know, when they see the water and they're on the train and they're looking at the train and they're going over the river, like the Anacostia River in our neighborhood, and they see that river has, you know, styrofoam in it or plastic bottles in it, they see it and they're affected by it. So I second that. You know, we need to have, like for our Sunday school programs, we need to get our kids outside. It's not just about memorization. It's about seeing what's in the Quran right outside, you know? So yeah, get these children out. Every child outdoors.
Yes, absolutely. And also, I really appreciate, Corey, your point. And I want to re-emphasize that it's important we recognize that nature is wherever we are, right? Like, it's not just, you know, out west of the United States in like the national parks, for example. It's not just quote unquote wilderness. Nature is everywhere that we are. Environment is everywhere that we are, whether you're in a city or a suburb or a rural environment.
Love that. Yeah. Seven, I cut you off. Go ahead, please.
If I remember to unmute in the right place. I agree. I mean, my personal passion is just bringing children up with the love, and that love that comes from connecting nature with its creator. But working with local environmental organizations, I come across a lot of people who don't think we can wait that long. And so the question that I was going to ask Nana was her response to that. What can we do for the adults? But, you know, I actually want to throw in a quick answer. Since Green Muslims did have a youth program just last summer, and I did something that not everyone agreed with, and for some of the classes I invited the parents to participate as well. Whether the parents had participated or the kids just took the messages home, there was still that intention of trying to influence parents through their children. So that's the one idea that comes to my mind. But any other ideas are welcome.
Yes, that's actually, I've tried that also. So like influencing the parents from their children, because I have this friend of mine who like told me the stories, because we actually had a like program with the children about like, you know, energy savings and, you know, just like be mindful when you're using energy. And then he said, well, he and his wife, they didn't really care. They're well off. So then they're just like leave everything, like, you know, the lights on, the AC on. And then their children's like, no, turn it off because, you know, you're wasting, nobody's in the room. And then he said, oh my God, I feel so embarrassed. Actually, my kids like told me. And I said, good. I said, like, good. I said, so like, he said, like, so his awareness of environment, like, you know, like conscious on this because of the children, because of his own children, they're telling that. And also like another thing that I'm like, one time I was like a friend of mine who's a principal, school principals, and then she said, oh, I want the you know, like the green program for the children in the school, can you help, like, you know, like create that? And I said, yes, of course, but I want to talk to the parents first. So we have parents meeting. So I'm like, you know, like train the parents. I said, if the parents is not on board, I'm not going to design any program for the children, because why do I, you know, why we're creating this wonderful program for the children if the parents don't even care? So I make the parents, you know, like have no choice, but they're like, have to be there. So I think like, that's, I agree with you, Savim. I'm also like trying that. I think that's a good strategy to get to the parents from their children. So like, yeah, because then parents feel like, oh, wow, my child is actually telling me this, like instead of me telling the child.
That's good to hear, because sometimes I think I aim for children because I'm intimidated by the parents. I'm not sure about that. I just wanted to note that some questions have come up about materials pertaining to these topics that we're discussing, and you can definitely check out both the Green Ramadan and the Green Muslims websites. But on the Green Muslims website, you're not going to find that much information yet. Things are coming, particularly in regards to our collection of Quranic verses relating to nature, but we have links to a lot of other organizations. And a lot of these organizations, some of them are climate action groups, but others are environmental education groups. And a lot of them, I mean, they also run their own programs, but they have a lot of free information as well that can definitely be taken to our communities, and especially the faith-based, the interfaith-based groups. They make an effort to make it applicable to mosques and Islamic centers as well. So definitely check out the websites, and there's a lot more than that, but you can always start with the Green Muslims website and then our partner organizations and their websites if it seems appropriate. So sorry for the interjection, but any other points? Quite welcome.
Okay.
Oh, and I wanted to add one more side note that came up much earlier about dandelions and about how useful they are. I don't know if everybody's reading the chat box. I'm getting better at reading and talking, but I've got a ways to go. But yes, dandelions do have medicinal purposes. I tell you, I've been pulling a lot of weeds in the yard lately, and I used to not pull weeds because I respected every plant that I saw and I didn't want to kill them. Well, I became a master naturalist, and I learned about the damage that some of our invasive plants do, and now I pull weeds starting with Bismillah and asking them to forgive me and Allah to forgive me. But I was sad to learn that dandelions are invasive because I actually love them. I would always leave them, but you know, if you can put the weeds, as we call them, to good use, I think that's a double win. So that's a great topic right there.
The best way to control any weeds is actually to eat them if they're
edible,
or to use them as medicine if they're medicinal.
And then you don't waste it. So no waste, and you're dealing with the weeds. It's a double win. I love that. Anybody else just want to share some thoughts or questions? I guess time is going by, but we've got another 10 minutes. So please feel free to ask anything or share anything you'd like. or suggest anything that we should be doing.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Arla from Los Angeles. I want to just say thank you to everyone. Sorry, I don't remember all the names, but like almost every comment resonated so much. You know, the one about social justice and also education and going through the children. So much good stuff. So it's hard to add much more right now. But I wanted to say that I think, and Sevim kind of touched upon this with the resources that are available now versus what you're hoping to do. I think Green Muslims, like, I would love to see, you know, you mentioned continuing, whether it's through webinars or resources, like education. I think this is probably a group that already cares about these issues, and it's awesome to hear the different perspective and expertise that everybody brings. I feel very humbled, like I'm, you know, kind of new to this scene as well, but have been maybe for 2 years now very passionate about doing things with kids in nature and getting them to respect and love that space. But I still feel very novice, and I feel like I have so much to learn. And I think I was drawn to this group and to Green Muslims for that reason, because I felt like this was a great opportunity or a great group that can inform my growth. And I think probably the hope here is that from this core group, you kind of have a group of ambassadors that go out into their communities and then become kind of the experts and leaders. I could be wrong, but I feel kind of like that's maybe what Green Muslims is going for. So I think like the more you can give us and equip us in terms of webinars, education, information, tips on how to engage community. And I know it's kind of a two-way street. People already have been doing that and can share their ideas, but that to me is a very powerful tool and would be excellent. And I look forward to seeing those resources and having those conversations. And that's whether it's working with kids or masajid, or the larger community. And I know this from like the past week's conversations, you know, there's been there's conversations on like, what can we do on a very personal level, like in our Ramadan or in our homes? And I feel like I could be more informed about that. I know I asked the question about like, who has suggestions for less plastic packaging? So like, these are questions, you know, I'm guessing other people have too. And then there's more community level, like how do I engage my community or masjid? And then there's like very large scale ones that to be perfectly honest, feel like a little bit above where I am right now. Like how do we change policies and how do we divest from fracking and kind of industries that are destructive to the environment? So sometimes it feels a little overwhelming, I will be honest, to just think on so many levels. But I love Corey's comment of, you know, we don't have to be perfect. You know, do what you can in the spaces you can. So I guess I would just put that out as a suggestion or kind of like a comment of, I'm excited to see what these resources and these conversations will look like, because I feel like, you know, I have the passion for this, but I don't feel quite equipped yet. And I'd love for Green Muslims to equip me to have these conversations and to hopefully make that impact on the community.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Those were amazing suggestions. And I'm glad we're already in touch, because I'm going to put you to work on putting this together for Green Muslims. So the problem for Green Muslims has always been lack of resources in terms of paid staff. But it's interesting because the current situation with coronavirus has changed my perspective completely, because it's either I change or I do nothing. Because I have a personal passion for taking kids out on nature hikes, there have been lots of opportunities to take small groups of people out, but we can't do that now. So now we need to move to making things virtual. And the benefit to making things virtual is that it can be available to even more people. So your points were excellent, and I think that's what not only Green Muslims, what we all need to be trying to do is to share the knowledge as much as possible right now. But I would definitely like to talk more about what specific information Green Muslims should be sharing, and everyone out there is welcome to share your thoughts, your suggestions, your knowledge, to put such things together, to put such programming together. But thank you so much, Ola. That's the recommendations are great. And yes, we start with what we have. I mean, I myself am passionate, but not that knowledgeable when I compare myself to certain groups of people, the ones that I interact with as far as the climate activists go. But I'm finding that the little bit of knowledge that I do have is still useful in our community. I look forward to the day when it's not anymore, but it still is. So if everybody can share whatever they've learned, and sometimes we have to discuss, it's not a definite yes or no, but those discussions need to be started.
I also think that when it comes to working with your community, you don't necessarily feel like you have to know everything, but you have to have the willingness to share. So there was this quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and I can't quote it word for word, but it was about service. So everyone can be of service. You don't have to speak correctly. You don't have to speak correctly to be of service. You don't have to have a degree in environmental science to be of service. You have to, going back to what Emily said, you have to love. You have to love yourself and love your community and love your planet, love your deen, and be just willing to serve. So I think approaching it as not necessarily being a knowledge leader, but being someone who wants to be of service with an intention to with a specific intention. Maybe your intention is to like, maybe this deed is going to be the thing that's going to tip the scales and get me into Jannah, you know? So with an intention to be of service with your faith as the base. So maybe if you approach it like that, it won't seem so scary.
Corey, that's what I like to call heart-centered servant leadership.
All right. I love it.
I was about to refer to what Emily had mentioned earlier, because so often people's intentions can come out in a very judgmental way. Oh, how dare you use that plastic water bottle? How dare you not do this right, not do that right? We don't want to do that to others or even to ourselves, because there's a tendency to give up completely. I know my own efforts to avoid plastic at home in the kitchen with food. I hate it passionately, but it's impossible to get it 100% right in this day and age. So we have to be willing to, yes, set an example, but be very, very careful to set a loving example rather than a judgmental example. But you also have to do that to yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself. It is pretty much impossible to get it all right now. We're just trying to improve over time. So we need to be a support group. I mean, I really look forward to this particular gathering to grow, and we find various ways of supporting each other, and maybe starting more organizations. Green Muslims is definitely interested in talking about chapters, but and I have to admit, many people have contacted us about trying to start something in other parts of the country. But it takes a certain degree of strength to be able to organize that too. So if anyone would like to get involved or start your own organization, we are not competing for names here. So anybody else like to share anything before we get around to closing? Thank you all so much. The questions, the ideas, everything has been very beneficial psychologically, and I'm taking notes as to things that Green Muslims needs to be working on.
So Munaza, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name incorrectly, but there is, you were talking about, everyday tips for softcore folks. So I mentioned Green Ramadan's calendar. And their Ramadan creation care calendar, that's something that can be used every day. So you can go through that every month of the year and learn something new. So for example, let's see, kind of close to what Nana was saying about, the kids. On one day, it says strive to waste less electricity. I mean, that's something that we can focus on, and there's something we can just focus on that thing, once a month, and it will become a habit. So just like you also mentioned another calendar, the Echo Ramadan Challenge. That's a calendar. These are things that we can do every day. Just try one thing, and I think it's a saying from the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that what is it, that small deeds done consistently, Allah likes those things. So just do one small thing and try to do it consistently. So if that means taking a reusable spork with you in your purse whenever you go out, so you're not using, single-use sporks or single-use cutlery, do that one thing, and do that one thing with the intention of, not being wasteful, because that's how the Prophet lived, sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Corey,
Very
can I
good
just
points.
say, can I just say, I think what I'm looking for, I just mentioned this in the chat too, and I wonder if other people are looking for this too. Like, as for example, as anytime I think the ongoing motivation that I'm looking for is more like something ongoing, like a social media type platform where, I don't know if you guys have, I know you're present on social media, but I don't know how active you guys are. Do you have active?
Check both of our Facebook accounts, because you'll see connections to other organizations as well. I think that's a good place to start.
I'm looking for chat. I'm looking for people going, oh, I tried this, and then, oh, hey, do that. I'm looking for crowdsourcing of information. That's kind of what and then I get motivated and I see that, and I go, oh, I can do that, so.
Oh my gosh, you have no idea how appropriate it is that you mention that. One thing, so I think I've said before, I'm pretty old school and not so much into social media myself. But fortunately, one of our volunteers has offered to start a WhatsApp group for Green Muslims. So we do hope to get something going in the very near future. I would highly recommend joining our mailing list, because it will be posted on social media, of course, but we also send out a newsletter. So, and I know there are several WhatsApp groups with various leanings that may be sharing similar ideas. Corey and I both have been included in a homesteading Muslimas group, which, they've got some interesting recommendations and examples. But yeah, if you can get yourself into such a group, and inshallah we will be starting one, and it would be great if you could join. That's a start. You connect with a few people, and they'll connect you with more people.
Yeah. I like to just see, I just like to see practices. I like to see people modeling things, and then I'd be like, oh, maybe they can do it, I can do it.
So I'm going to suggest your name for this one group that we're already a part of, but I'll remember to add it to our group too, inshallah.
Sure. Is there a link for your email list?
If you go through the website, greenmuslims.org, you can sign up through that. Awesome.
So we have to close it a little bit. But before,
are you telling me something, Corey?
No, not at all. So, but before we go, so back to your point, you want to see people modeling things. So, for example, I think it was Chicago Muslims Green Team. They were like, take your celery, put it in some water, and watch it grow during Ramadan. So I had never done that, and I'm a beginning gardener, so I was like, okay. But I tried. I had some bok choy that I got from my CSA, which is a good thing to do too. And I, took the leaves I wanted, and then I put it in here in this rice pudding cup. And it's been growing like this for I think just 2 weeks. Bok choy just sitting in water. And so, I'm inspired like you. You know, when I see other people doing things, I'm like, okay, let me try. I never thought to do that, and so it's gotten some roots. So I think I'll maybe put it in my garden and see how far I can go with this.
Thank you so much for sharing, Corey, because that's where it starts, with little practices.
Hey!
Perfect.
What is that?
Sorry to jump into, I'm sure Sevim and Corey know the Green Muslim like social media outlets might better, but also I've noticed Green Muslims has been trying to like post more and have more of a presence in Instagram. So that's another suggestion, to like on Instagram, and they've had some really good posts and ideas there too.
Who is this?
That was Ola.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
This
sorry.
is Ola. Yes.
Ola, you were talking about Green Muslims on Instagram?
Yes, I hope
Okay.
that's the right account, right?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I've been following the wrong group. Yes, I've just noticed that there's just been a lot more posts, and they have kind of those like snippets or like ideas, or you know, shopping locally. I'm trying to remember the ones that I've seen recently. So that's just another suggestion for the person who mentioned they would like to see social media platforms, and I think it would just be good to say in this group so that more people would follow, and it would kind of you know, increase exposure for Green Muslims on that space.
Thank you so much for mentioning Ola. Oh my gosh, I wish we had more time, because now I need to type while talking. Everybody, thank you so much. I can't take credit for the social media, by the way, because it's not my thing, but Hala, who's been at our previous gatherings, is doing a good job, especially during Ramadan, posting the daily recommendations, but also she has a lot of experience with gardening, which she's sharing her knowledge. Everyone, thank you so much for all of your ideas. Please be on the lookout for our next meeting, because I would really like to just keep meeting with this group and have this group grow over time until we become, inshallah, the majority in some form or another. So thank you so much. I think I didn't get, greenmuslims.org, the website. Check it out, and you'll see the place to sign up for our listserv. And greenramadan.com is Corey's website, and we're both on Facebook and all social media. So check us out. My email address is sevim, SEVIM, @greenmuslims.org. So feel free to email me directly. Everyone, thank you so much. I'm going to close with Al-Asr, and inshallah, we will see you all again, hopefully sometime next month. Eid Mubarak, everybody, and thank you so much for joining. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Asr, innal insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you. Eid Mubarak.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Emily. I miss you.
Miss you too. I miss everybody. We can only see each other now on Zoom. But I love you all.
I thought I would love Zoom so much, but now any human face is good, or voice for that matter.
It's needed at this time, you know. So alhamdulillah that we have methods of gathering.
I need a Zoom occasion after this.
Yeah, I know,
we
right?
all do. It's interesting how they say it's more exhausting than really talking to humans.
Yeah. All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm going to end this meeting.
Assalamu alaikum.
Eid Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak.